Pete Thamel from Yahoo Sports joining us now. He has been following this story. Pete, what are your sources telling you about where things stand right now?
Well, for all the buzz on Sunday about a potential resolution, Dave, I would say it has been a quiet Monday so far. I've had more sources reaching out to me for information, especially coaches, than actual information has been gleaned. And here's how I'm looking at how the Big Ten presidents and chancellors approach the next step here. Obviously, when this decision was first made, it was seemingly made in a rush and it was not communicated well. So they are not going to make that mistake again if they do decide to come back. I would say, Dave, the general sentiment remains optimism that the Big Ten will play this fall and will attempt to play at some point in October, with October 17th still targeted as the preferred date to attempt to get things going. The sentiment of optimism hasn't changed. Will the timeline change? Perhaps. The Big Ten needs to get this right, and they need to message it right. You're talking about a new commissioner who's been there less than a year, and 5 of your 14 presidents who are trying to balance the trillion-dollar higher ed businesses that they oversee. 5 of the 14 are new. And because the 5 of the 14 are new, and they clearly felt blowback at many campuses from the initial decision, they're going to make sure things like testing, things like contact tracing are there, and that the Big Ten can definitively say, this is why things are decisively different than they were a month ago.
Pete, my sense in kind of trying to reconstruct what happened a month ago is that a ton of it was about testing, and that they really were not at a point where they felt like they could put players on the field and know definitively whether or not they had COVID. And if they couldn't do that, they weren't going to play. So is it your opinion that this really comes down to, you mentioned testing and contact tracing, but if you feel really, really good about the testing part, you don't have to worry as much about the contact tracing, which frankly is virtually impossible to do in a football game anyway. Is it your sense this is simply a testing issue right now and getting to a point where they have the rapid antigen tests and they can say in 15 minutes, yay or nay, as to whether you have it?
Yeah, I'd be stunned if there were some type of decision made that didn't involve daily rapid testing as part of the solution. If there's one definitive difference, Dave, from August 11th when this decision was first made, it is the accessibility, availability of daily rapid testing. To me, daily rapid testing is going to be the key to all of this, and it's how the Big Ten can explain why they didn't think it was safe a month ago, and now seemingly are on the cusp of saying it's safe to play now.
You mentioned the October 17th date. That is one that has been bandied about as maybe the earliest possible starting point for the Big Ten. Is it your belief that that would allow the Big Ten, were they to start then, to compete for a spot or spots in the college football playoff?
Well, I went to Syracuse, Dave, so my math isn't good, but I believe that gives you 8 games in a bye week with a December 19th title game. The math classes were pretty rudimentary at Syracuse. But if you can play the Big Ten title game, which, by the way, is a huge financial component, it's a big part of the television package. Like, if you can have a champion, you can squeeze in a season and have a champion. I can't fathom the college football playoff would not wait to accommodate the Big Ten.
What are you hearing from coaches about what it would take for them to get their teams ready?
What I'm hearing is coaches are nervous, coaches are anxious, and coaches want answers. Barry Alvarez, who is not the Wisconsin coach, but once was, and is as tied to his program as any, told me on Saturday night that he and Paul Chryst are on the same page, that they would only need 3 weeks to play because they're amid a pause that's supposed to end September 24th, I believe. So that essentially, Barry wouldn't get into dates with me, but basically if you do the math, Barry feels like they could be ready if that 17th date was indeed the date. Maryland is on pause right now, but I've been given no indication that there's not a desire in the athletic department at football level for Maryland to play. And then for other schools, Iowa's coming off a pause. A lot of schools sent their players home because it was mid-August and they didn't want to grind them into the ground if they weren't going to play until January. So it's going to be a campus-by-campus process for getting players in shape and getting them ready and starting camp. But the general belief is that's feasible. And the 17th isn't set in stone right now as a start date. It is a preference. And I would imagine, much like the initial Jenga schedule, as the Big Ten was calling it, was set up with flexibility. We'll see similar flexibility with whatever Big Ten schedule does potentially.
Yahoo's Pete Thamel. Fascinating times we are living in, my friend. Really appreciate your insight, all your hard work on this story, and I'm sure we will talk to you again soon.
Yes, thanks to all the Big Ten coaches for the gifts they've been sending. They've kept me amused.